Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Baldurs Gate 3, more patch 7 discussion and showcasing. Today we're taking a look at some of the new stuff that's introduced in patch 7, some stuff that's kind of buggy and weird and interesting you might not have known about, as well as a major discovery in the community for modding in general. So let's just get into it. So for our first thing, we're jumping into game to do a little live recording to show you the changes with ladders. A big deal in patch 7 obviously, but also more than you might imagine, and you may have even noticed this in your own gameplay. They changed the ladder interactions to give them more detail to the animation, so as I go to climb a ladder, we can see that there's just a slightly changed animation. He stops and climbs up and is more just interacting with the ladder, I guess. Not a big deal, very subtle change. Sure, nice to have like a little animation improvement. What people are generally complaining about on the Reddit, and again I think it's understandable, is the fact that one by one the party has to climb the ladder now. Instead of them all just sort of swooping up there pretty damn quick, we have to wait for one of them to climb all the way up the ladder. And then we have to wait for all the way for one more. And then we're still waiting. And Asterion is finally coming up the ladder. It's such a slower, like it really slows down the pace of the game. And while that's generally not a problem here in this scenario, think about like the Iron Throne mission. Is there not like a pretty key ladder in the center of that with lots of NPCs involved in climbing up that ladder on a time limit? That's just the first thing that jumps to mind when I think about slow ladder climbing being a problem. Something I'm also seeing across the board though are people experiencing bugs where the character actually freezes before using the ladder, or after climbing it, freezing for a little while. I don't know if that's with specific ladders or something. I haven't been able to recreate it myself, but there's a lot of people discussing it on the Reddit, so I have to believe that some people's computers or some form of the patch is causing that issue. But it's not just with ladders. Any kind of climbing animations have changed, like these cragged rocks. It's the same kind of ladder climb animation, and as before, we have to wait for one by one by one by one in a very slow, kind of stuttered way. And again, people are experiencing the same kind of lag with some sort of freezing occurring for some when they initially interact with it or after. And you know, these aren't like everywhere, but they're common enough to be in pretty much every area that you interact with. So it's definitely a noticeable change in the patch. On that topic, here's just a little thing that bugs me, I guess in particular, and maybe won't affect you in any way. Basically here in Rivington, right here by the waypoint, I do a lot of little recordings, different builds and stuff. There's guards here that are just perfect dummies. In fact, there were some standing right here, and they're just gone. Not only that, the ladder that would lead up here is also gone, so I have to walk all the way around here. It's just a place where I would have a really convenient way to hit some guards in a set location right by a waypoint in Act 3, and the ladder is just gone, and so are the guards. Very strange. Okay, for our next one, we have a one night kind of thing, as Larian puts it. This absolutely diabolically evil thing is now in the Dark Urge playthrough, and I'm going to provide minor spoilers in Act 1 for the first kind of rest when you have a surprise visitor during the Dark Urge scene. So as you can see, like normal, we have the Dark Urge, we're in Act 1, we go to camp, and alfira does find you, the bard, possible origin character that never was. Obviously a lot of people are still upset about that, so Larian have done this very kind thing to actually help out a little bit. Now it's technically possible for her to ask you if she can join the party if you have a free slot available when she shows up. So as you can see, you can say yeah, sure, why not, and she will actually join the party and fill a slot on the left. You can take a look at her details, but not only that, she's fully functional. You can actually level her up, and she is indeed a bard. You can choose her subclass and all the other stuff that you do with leveling up any companion. It's all fully functional on there. Obviously, no matter what you do or what's going to happen next, when you go to sleep, as she eventually suggests, yeah, it's happening no matter what you do. This is obviously pretty dastardly by Larian, and it's a big discussion of like, wow, I can't believe they did this. Like, they would bait us. After all, we have 2 druids that can be companions in this game and no bards, and this one's just like the exact one we want. Well, it is being said that technically with them introducing her in this temporary way to be part of the party, giving her, you know, all the normal functions, maybe they're basically just opening the door for us to mod her in. She might not have like the super in-depth storylines that the other characters have, but she could be a playable companion. Maybe this now makes it possible. So that's just a pretty cool, brutal little addition. However, if you didn't know, I might as well reference it. There is another bard that's a relevant character in the Dirge's origins in Act 1. You know, one bard must perish, it would seem. So if you find Alfira and try to kind of, you know, get around the game, as it were, and knock her out so she's not actually available during that important camp time, a different bard will show up. And it is this Silver Dragonborn, Quill, who basically takes the exact same place, asking to stay. And, you know, the Dark Urge does Dark Urge things in this first main sleep. She's actually an interesting character. She does have some unique throat singing. And either way, whatever bard you go with, even if you say no, you can't stay, the Dark Urge just tracks them down. The same outcome will play. On that note, I do want to make you aware of the very cool Alfira kind of bard outfit. There is a mod that exists right now that's actually very popular. It's this one, NPC and outfit inspired dyes. The idea is that there are NPCs that have different color schemes and interesting setups that we normally don't have access to. And for bards, the most popular requested thing is Alfira's kind of custom dye set. So through this mod, you're actually able to get access to it, where yes, they still didn't add it or give us her clothes even with this update. So that is also an option now. So if you're interested in that for any bard players, NPC and outfit inspired dyes, that's the mod. Here's another one to do with the Dark Urge then. In Act 1, we actually have some new interesting self-aware references super early in the playthrough. When you click on your characters and then click on them directly, you can get like a little self-aware line, usually in the context of what's going on in the world right now for that character and their current story progression. With the Dark Urge then in Act 1, it's kind of what you should expect.
I can do better. I must.
Yeah, so he's confused and he's got these violent urges. It's the Dark Urge. But a new one seemingly added with this patch, because they have changed narration and stuff specifically for the Dark Urge with patch 7, is this particular line that feels a little bit spoilery and certainly too early in Act 1. Listen.
Father, they will die for you.
Father, they will die for you. Yeah, Act 1, like really early. Like I'm not even in the goblin camp when I was testing this. So obviously they've done a lot with this patch in terms of banter and passive lines and adding a little bit more life to the party just passively while you're moving around. But this one's pretty on the nose, like really intense. Now, I saw some discussion about it on the Reddit, and I think my favorite kind of explanation was a Freudian slip. The idea that the Dark Urge reality is slipping out in those dire moments, or those subtle moments too. Nothing's actually happening, he's just saying something without realizing what he's saying. Obviously, it still fits with the character one for one, but yeah, it's very on the nose, and I think quite spoilery for Act 1. Let me know what you think. Now, another thing that came in patch 7 in general is the banter, right? And it goes more in depth for specific types of relationships. You and Astarion can be an obvious example. There's a load of those being added, but they've called them out and added them for a lot of different relationships. And the interactions actually between some characters about your relationship with a different character. So there's a lot kind of woven in there. And what's interesting about it is apparently they were already in the game and it's just been bugged so that they would rarely ever actually play or just weren't working for no good reason. It's nice because it's like getting a load of little bits of extra dialogue and narration and, you know, content that was always meant to be there. It just wasn't working. Anyway, there's quite a few highlights I could show. Some of Astarion's best ones were posted on Twitter by someone called Cat or Pale Balls Lover. Fantastic username. They posted 2 longer videos about lots of different interactions they had, but here's a couple of my favorites.
Rich of you to talk about someone else's heart, Karlak. But I must admit, my chest has been feeling a touch lighter recently.
It suits you beautifully.
Yes, most things do.
Astarion, I was wrong about you.
Let me guess. You thought I'd suck blood, but actually I just suck. Was that your witty jab?
No, I mean it. There's little between us we share, but you've fallen in love and stood by your lover. That is something this dreamer's heart can appreciate.
Obviously though, it's not all just about Astarion. For example, when you are in a romance with Lae'zel, Shadowheart might comment on it now. As we can see from this screenshot of the conversation, we can see that Shadowheart's saying to the Tav, I wouldn't have predicted the night you shared with our friend Lae'zel. You didn't consider it beneath you. At which point Lae'zel responds with, they were beneath me at times, but also above me and standing at certain points. Shadowheart is horrified. The most concerning and intense ones are generally Lae'zel and Minthara interacting in any way, as shown by this new dialogue here. So yes, expect lots of new banter that's occurring in terms of romance, but beyond that too. Another part of the patch 7 was how the banter wasn't really working in multiplayer, and they've kind of introduced it there. So not only in single player, we got lots of romance related new dialogue to enjoy, party banter is actually going to be working and make the passive moving through the terrain a lot more engaging. Alright, for this one, it's kind of a big deal, and hopefully we'll see more from this in the future. But as you can see, what we're looking at is actually a Nexus mod rather than the mod manager in Larian. And it is the Baldurs Gate 3 Toolkit Unlocked mod, which, as it explains, unlocks features and write permissions for the Baldurs Gate 3 toolkit, including things that were previously restricted or not available, like level editing. What does that actually mean? Well, it was a topic that people were hoping that we would get like a campaign and level editor in the future. And it's my understanding that Larian wasn't able to do that with Baldurs Gate 3 because Hasbro wasn't allowing it. However, with them adding the modding toolkit to allow us to mod directly mess with the game and make it easier to create mods for the game, it seems that it wasn't that difficult for people to find the files to actually get access to the level editor and so on. There's a lot of, speculation right now that Larian intentionally did this and made it very easy, and there's a lot of potential with it. But will they allow it to stay? Larian might have kind of washed their hands of it, and technically it's available and possible to get access to, as we're seeing. But Hasbro, they have the power to shut it down, I assume. The community generally really obviously wants this. I saw a comment on the Reddit talking about how Neverwinter Nights existed for 2 decades because of mod tools that kept it going, that were much more engaging than the original base material. There's lots of hope and fan theory that we could see them use the current Baldurs Gate 3 assets, level editor and all that, to recreate Baldurs Gate 1 and 2 just in this engine, using what's available from the original games and obviously Baldurs Gate 3. That's a massive concept that would not happen in a day, even if it was possible. But it does breathe quite a lot of long-term life into the game, with something as major as a campaign and level editor being possible for use. At very least, it means you can create custom maps, maybe new campaigns. It's my understanding that Larian let things like this exist in their other games like Dragon Age Origins because they know it's only good for the game long term. But again, Hasbro, it's a different story. Either way, it's major news, and the question is, how long will it survive? We're gonna have to see. Okay, so for a last little thing, I just want to follow up on something I talked about in a recent kind of news episode on the topic. Basically, Amelia Tyler is the narrator for the game. Tracy Wiles is actually the actor for Jahira. Recently, they were at Comic-Con Ireland, and they've been having lots of discussions and fun and lots of pictures. Pretty cool to see them together, right? But Tracy Wiles, or Jahira, really wants to introduce Jahira romance to the game. She's obviously up for it. And the narrator is also up for it, which you'd think would be at least, the 2 most important people to have on board to make that possible. And since they've been confirming very clearly that it's not the final update for the game, there is still this vague, blind hope that they'll open up opportunities to do stuff like that. Which is why I just want to highlight that Sven Vink replied to this post by the narrator, by Amelia Tyler, that God says no, because she said, please God, give Jahira a romance. Not looking likely, basically, guys. But there you have it. That's my overview of all things patch 7 and weirdness and interesting stuff to talk about. Let me know what you think on many of the different topics. And if there's anything you'd add to these, then yeah, let me know. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.